Hey everyone, my name is Marquis Stokes and welcome to my YouTube channel. Before we get started, please make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Those things really help me out and help my channel continue to grow. So without any further ado, let's dive in. Growing up, I didn't watch a lot of movies because I loved watching Star Wars the most. I love all the Star Wars movies, but some critics would argue that the original trilogy is better than the prequel trilogy. Everyone's entitled to an opinion, but it doesn't always mean that they're right. But what if I told you that there is one Star Wars movie that really stood out to me the most? One that I consider to be my favorite. Are you ready? It's Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. Here's why. George Lucas had a vision, and he knew where the story was going. The way George Lucas executed the story was perfect. Star Wars Revenge of the Sith laid the groundwork for the original trilogy, which is what nobody wants to admit. If it had not been for Revenge of the Sith, the original trilogy wouldn't work. Sometimes making movies is not about how we feel the movie should be made, it's what the author intended to achieve. When you're telling a story, you're telling a story using tools. You're not using tools to tell a story. The reason why Revenge of the Sith is my favorite Star Wars movie is because I love the story, visual effects, musical score, dialogue, and the film's darker tone. It's a story that talks about Anakin's transformation into Darth Vader. It's a story that talks about the transformation of the Galactic Republic into the Galactic Empire. It's a movie that makes Star Wars feel like Star Wars, which leads me to my first topic, the politics. Star Wars was always political. You can't understand Star Wars without understanding the politics behind it. Palpatine was inspired by Richard Nixon. Nixon tried to stay in power by seeking a third term. Palpatine tried to stay in power too, by leveraging the war as an excuse to stay in power. Palpatine not only tried to stay in power, but he also abused his power by executing the Jedi. George wanted to talk about how a democracy becomes a dictatorship. Star Wars was always anti-authoritarian. I enjoy the politics of Star Wars because it's what makes Star Wars feel like Star Wars. Without politics, there can be no Star Wars. The politics of the prequels laid the groundwork for the original trilogy, which leads me to my next topic, the mythology. Revenge of the Sith is a tragic story that focuses on Anakin's descent to the dark side. The mythology of the story has references to the older stories of humanity. It's a Greek tragedy that focuses on internal conflict, hubris, fate versus free will, and hamartia. The mythology is told from the perspective of Anakin's fears, the choices he makes, and the consequences he has to deal with. Star Wars was inspired by The Hero with a Thousand Faces by Joseph Campbell. It talks about a character who goes on a journey, faces trials, and ends up being transformed. Star Wars is a family soap opera, and it talks about the issues of fathers, sons, and grandfathers. George Lucas once said, in science fiction you have two branches. One is science, and the other is social. When George made Star Wars, his movies always focus on the internal struggles of the characters and how they react to things affecting them. George Lucas's Star Wars was realistic, and Revenge of the Sith felt realistic because it was a story told about the average hero that suffers. In science fiction, you have to create a real world that doesn't exist, and it has to have an immaculate reality, even though it's not real. Which leads me to my final topic, the world building. The world building in Revenge of the Sith was phenomenal. George used real-world locations to make the story look realistic, but he also used CGI, which I believe was an excellent choice. George once said that technology is used to tell a story. One of the things that I give credit to George Lucas for is being a risk-taker. And George said, movies are all about risks, and you're doing things that have never been done before and that have never been tested. The reason why Revenge of the Sith was a success is because George was consistent, and consistency is the key to success. Let me know in the comments what you think about my thoughts on Revenge of the Sith, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. I'll talk to you guys next time, and may the Force be with you.